Dear students, I am Kritika, Faculty of History here at Unacademy IAS. So I am here to just brief you about the history part which was asked in the mains 2024. So history falls under GS paper 1, and let me give you an idea of how to approach history questions and how easy it was this year. If your facts were strong, if your concepts were clear, I think these questions were damn easy and very simple. But to understand these topics, you should have a clarity and a little bit of depth in the particular topic. So when we look at history, so I'll just make you understand like how to go about with it and how to write a beautiful answer. So now the first question, underline the changes in the field of society and economy. Underline the changes in the field of the society and the economy from the Rigvedic to the later Vedic period. So it's just they're asking you to highlight the differences between the early Vedic period and the later Vedic period, particularly in the field of economy and society. So it's a very easy part. So when you look at overall the Vedic age, the Vedic age falls in 1600, it ends in 600 BC. Overall, the Vedic age. And we divide Vedic age into two as early Vedic period, or it's called the Rigvedic period, and the later Vedic period. When you look at the Rigvedic period, it's from 1600 to 1000 BC. And when you look at the later Vedic period, it is from 1000 to 600 BC. So give a small introduction about how was the Vedic age, how did it enter, and how did historians split it into two. Now we'll directly go on to the question, changes in the field of society and economy. So you see, in this question, you can either make a table or you can divide, you can make a table, divide the page into two, or you can write in paragraphs. That is also allowed. So I'm here to just give you a simple idea about, so I'll just divide the paper into two. So we'll write it like society. I'll write it as society, and I will cut it into two as early Vedic period society and later Vedic period society. The same way we'll take the economy and I'll cut it into two as early Vedic period and later Vedic period. So because the question is clearly what were the changes in the field of society. So how was it in early Vedic and how was it in later Vedic? That was a question. So a small understanding is required in this topic. Now let's go to the division. If you look at the early Vedic period society here, see, first let's understand the society. Both the Vedic age had a very concentrated form of family system. So both of them were patriarchal, that will become a similarity. The second one, both had joint family system, that will be a similarity. But going on to the third feature here, in early Vedic period, grandfather was the head of the family. And here in later Vedic period, father became the head of the family. And that is because of the ashrama system which entered during this period. So getting it then. Moving on to the second pattern, we go on with marriage. When you look at the concept of marriage here, marriage was considered to be a sacred institution, where in early Vedic period we had the presence of monogamy, we had polygamy, some evidences with gods, we have polyandry, then we have no child marriage, widow remarriage was compulsory, then there was no kind of formal or informal marriages were here. So here marriages were kind of simple, lucid, and it was sticking on to the same pattern. But coming on with the concept of marriage here, marriage became more elaborate here. Say for example, in later Vedic period, with the entry of Varna system, we happen to have two types of marriages called the Anuloma marriage and the Pratiloma marriage. Plus, there were 8 types of informal marriages. So if you're able to understand that, or if you're able to write it, you can just quote that 8 type of marriages were there, plus Anuloma and Pratiloma. And here during this period, we see the evidence of polyandry practiced by people. So again, in the concept of dowry, absence of dowry here, which was a voluntary action, but here dowry became compulsory. You can club that in the concept of marriage. Then moving on to the third one, there was no Varna system. This concept of Varna, Jati and Gotra was not there in early Vedic period. In the third one, presence of Varna, Jati and Gotra. So it's a clear division. Here the society was divided into three, but here the society got divided into four. And with Varna came Jati, absence of Jati. With Jati came Gotra, absence of Gotra. So it was a kind of an open society which was divided because 1000 BC in the Rig Veda, the Purusha Shukta hymn deals about the Varna system, which is also mentioned in the Rig Veda. So we are talking about the divisions of Varna here. Moving on to the next one, there was no untouchability here. Here the fourth point, we have the evidence of untouchability coming. The first evidence of untouchability is where Varna system comes into the picture, where a woman who would be a Brahmana marrying a Shudra boy. That combination is where the beginning of untouchability was seen. So we say prevalence of untouchability, there was no sort of untouchability. And when you look at here, absence of ashramas. There was no ashrama system here. And when you put it here, presence of ashramas. So ashramas, you need not elaborate it, but you can just mention the Brahmanas, the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, Shudras. When the Varna system entered, ashramas became very popular. So which means the Brahmacharya, the Grihastha, the Vanaprastha and the Sannyasa. That part became very common here. So that was seen during this period. So education was common here, education was common. Prostitution was the same, it was same here. Slavery a commitment, it was a commitment here. So again, when you look at it, occupation was open to all, occupation became Varna based. So how do we conclude it here? It was egalitarian. How do we conclude it here? It was partly egalitarian. Simple. So this is what is the differences what we get. So you can make it as a paragraph or you can make it like a table and you can go ahead. So this is the social part. To learn this, you need to have a very good clarity of what exactly is about it. I think all the topics of history have been dealt very much in detail in the classes. So class notes have all these in detail. So you will even get a more clarity once you get into it. Now moving on to the economy of later Vedic period. So how was the economy? When you look into the economy of early Vedic period and later Vedic period, see, Aryans were cattle rearers. Aryans belong to the pastoral community. So when you look at economy here, it was in a subsistence level. Subsistence level was there, that is, okay. It was in a subsistence level. That is, subsistence farming was there. So they cultivated according to their need, according to their necessity. But here agriculture went on with extensive use of agriculture. So here we have agriculture followed by cattle rearing, followed by animal husbandry, followed by domestication of animals. So again, when you look at here, we have wooden plowshare being used. Getting it? But here we have the use of iron plowshare. Because during the later Vedic period, Aryans began to expand towards the eastern part of India. And eastern part of India, the extensive use of iron is seen because iron, with all the iron equipments what they've had, they cleared the forest, they began to cut trees, so they obtained timber, they began to live in wooden houses, so they got a vast area where cities were formed. And particularly when you look at economy, this was kind of early Vedic period economy was kind of rural, and here it was kind of semi-urban. Getting that is why we have cities like Koshambi, cities like Ayodhya, cities like Mithila, Hastinapur, Kurukshetra, all those cities, semi-urbanized cities came up during later Vedic period. But in early Vedic period, Aryans lived in what? It was like a concept of tribal polity where kinship was existing there. So that is the basic difference what we see here. Then here, Bali was a voluntary tribute during early Vedic period, but in later Vedic period, Bali became a form of tax. So Bali was exactly a tax, but here Bali was exactly a kind of a tribute. So that is one difference what we can see. And when you look at occupation here, it was open to all. So the Rig Veda says that my father was a poet, my mother was a corn seller, son was a singer. So in one family we had multiple occupation. But here in later Vedic period, occupation became Varna based. Though it was flexible, because we are highlighting the differences, what is the changes. So when you look at the changes, gradually, with the developmental structure of the society, economy also has underwent some sort of changes. So these are the major changes we see in economy and we see in society. Then you can give a conclusion. Generally, history conclusion can come like thus, therefore, hence. So because the question is just underline, you have to just highlight how the early Vedic period and later Vedic period economy and society was. So this is the first question. Now moving on to the second question. Yeah. So when I read the question, estimate. So the question starts with estimate, which means you have to put a word and you have to tell what exactly happened. The contribution of Pallavas of Kanchipuram, Kanchi, for the development of art and literature of South India. Now again, to get back here, let's go on to the rule of the Pallava. If you look at the Pallavas of Kanchipuram, who were the Pallavas? Pallavas were feudal lords. Feudal lords of the Cholas. See, first you need to understand one thing. There were two type of Pallavas. We call them as early Pallavas and the later Pallavas. Early Pallavas were there during Guptas. During Guptas, they were all there because, to just give you an idea, when Samudragupta attacked South India, and when Pan India was established. So Samudragupta in his Allahabad Prasasti writes about a Pallava ruler. So Pallavas were feudal lords. The early Pallavas were having all their inscriptions in Prakrit. So the later Pallavas started using their inscriptions in Sanskrit and Tamil. Why? Because here, when they talk about the Pallavas of Kanchipuram, we are understanding them to be the later Pallavas who were the feudal lords of Cholas. So what is the bracket of these Pallavas? It's 575 to 879 AD. So first learn the bracket. I've dealt all of them in detail in all our classes. So first you should know the bracket, and they were the feudal lords of Chola. So what did Pallavas, how did the Pallavas promote for the development of art and literature? So what is art? First let's understand what is art. Art includes sculpture, art includes language, art includes literature, art includes music, art includes dance and architecture. First let's understand. Then of course literature, the text what they have written. So when you look at the Pallavas, the answer it's like estimate, which means UPSC is asking you to give them the answer of how Pallavas patronized art and literature. So now give an introduction that the Pallavas ruled the kingdom of Kanchipuram, and it was also called as Tondai Mandalam. They replaced the Cholas around 545 AD with Simha Vishnu as their major founder. And there is no clear evidence about Simha Vishnu, but after Simha Vishnu, the next ruler was very great and very powerful. He was Mahendravarman I. So the entire Pallava glory starts with Mahendravarman I. So give a glimpse about the first ruler Mahendravarman I. Because Mahendravarman I himself was a patron. He was a patron of art and literature. Mahendravarman I, he was a great scholar, and which means he wrote a Sanskrit book, and the book was called as Matta Vilasa Prahasanam. So Matta Vilasa Prahasanam in Sanskrit. It's a kind of a satire. A satire like how, it's like how, he was mocking at the Buddhist and the Shaivites in this book. So this book, the way he wrote it was kind of very much into the classical work. He also wrote a book called the Bhagavata Ajikhyata. That was also one book written by Mahendravarman, but those are too much of details. But if you remember Matta Vilasa Prahasanam, exact book about what? About it's a kind of a comedy and a great work in Sanskrit. He was a great musician. He was a great musician and he was a great Veena player. So Mahendravarman was an excellent Veena player, and his musical notes are found in a cave called Kudumiyan Malai Caves. So Kudumiyan Malai is in Tamil Nadu, Getting it? So it is found in Kudumiyan Malai caves, which clearly gives us an idea about how Mahendravarman was a great musician and his musical notes are found there. Getting it? And then we talk about his paintings are found at the Sittanavasal caves. Getting that is why we call Sittanavasal cave. It had the fresco painting. So fresco was a unique technology used by the Pallavas. So he himself was a painter. And Sittanavasal is in Tamil Nadu. Kudumiyan Malai caves is in Tamil Nadu. These both of them were contributed by Mahendravarman I himself. So that shows that these are crown art. A king patronizing what? Art form. So that was one thing. And this Mahendravarman, he established a famous university, which is called the first university of South India, called Kanchipuram University in 600 AD. And this university was a great center of learning. So great center of learning what? So it taught Buddhism, it taught Vedas, it taught Jainism, it taught painting, it taught dance, it taught Tamil and Sanskrit. So it was teaching music, it was teaching sculpture. So this university was a kind of a cultural university. Students from across came and they took classes from this university and they got benefited. So that credit goes to Mahendravarman. So the first greatest king Mahendravarman himself takes all the credit of what? Contributing towards the art and literature. So this is about Kanchipuram University. Again, when you look at Mahendravarman, he was the first one he actually constructed, because when we say art, again we are talking about the sculpture. There was a great promotion in sculptural art also. He was an artist. He had a famous sculptor called Iyer. Iyer sculpted certain postures of Bharatanatyam dance during Mahendravarman I. So all these, postures which has been sculpted, were considered to be the great classical work during the Pallavas. That is why Pallavas were known for their miniature sculpture. If you look at all their temple, you see that micro carving, small carvings, and there is one point called Vyalas. Every Pallava temple will have a Vyala, and Vyalas are considered to be a greatest one which was introduced by the Pallavas. So that is all with Mahendravarman. Then we are moving on to the next part. It was during the Pallavas. So we've taken Mahendravarman I, but it was during Pallavas, they promoted lots of other literary work. The best one I can tell you, there were two group of Bhakti saints called the Alvars and the Nayanmars. So if you would have done your Bhakti movement and the concept of Bhakti devotion, it originated in the Pallava kingdom with the help of two great scholars called the Alvars and Nayanmars. Alvars were worshippers of Vishnu, Nayanmars were worshippers of Shiva. Alvars were 12 in number, Nayanmars were 63 in number. So they all wrote a book. Say for example, Alvars wrote a book called Nalayara Divya Prabandham. So the collection of all work is called Nalayara Divya Prabandham, and the collection of Nayanmar work is called Tevaram. So Tevaram is a collection of the works of Nayanmars wrote in Tamil. So these are great works about devotion and about bhakti. So we have immense literature written by the Alvars and Nayanmars in Tamil. So this is one contribution of Pallavas towards literature for the development of bhakti. Then we have a great scholar called Dandan. Dandan, a great scholar. He lived during the court of the Pallavas, and particularly he wrote a book called Kavya Darsha. So Kavya Darsha, he wrote a book. So Dandan, you can just quote Dandan. Then you can also quote a great scholar, a Sanskrit scholar called Bharavi. Bharavi, a great Sanskrit scholar, lived during the period of Pallavas and it was promoted. Then there was one great work in Tamil called Nandi Kalambagam. That was also written by an unknown author, but Nandi Kalambagam comes during the Pallava rule. So when you try to understand and write all the literary work with promotion to their art forms, I think this question is fine. So now we've just answered the question about what all the achievements they've done. So Pallavas were beginners of art and literature in South India. So this is about the highlight of this question. So try to read it. Class notes do have them all. Moving on to the next question. What were the events? It's a very simple question, a direct question. What were the events that led to the Quit India movement? So they're asking you about the Quit India movement and point out its result. So getting it, so you're gonna talk about events which led to the Quit India movement. See, this was the first mass anti-colonial movement. When I say first here, there were many other movements also. But when I talk about, the first massive anti-colonial movement, which was radical, violent, and which had a great spread. So we mean it in that way. We're not calling it, because much before that we had the Swadeshi, we have non-cooperation, we have the civil disobedience. So when we say it's the first massive anti-colonial struggle where the entire section of people were involved, and it was most radical, violent, and the spread was very much immense. And this Quit India movement, it began in 1942, August 8th, 1942. So that's why, it is also called as the August Kranti movement. So give a small introduction of Quit India movement. So, in 1942, it was launched by Mahatma Gandhi, where the famous slogan, do or die, was given as a big mantra. So give a small introduction of Quit India movement. But why Quit India movement? Because UPSC asks you, what were the events which led to the Quit India movement? So here we are going to focus on the event. The first event is failure of Cripps. See, the August offer failed, and failure of the Cripps proposal, because Stafford Cripps reached India and he wanted to meet the Indian rulers, particularly the Indian leaders, and he wanted to get the support for the World War. And parallelly, the World War is going on. And it was proposed that they would give dominion status after the war, which was not very clear. So the Congress, we totally rejected the Cripps proposal. So failure of Cripps was one of the reason even. The second one was growing nationalism. So growing nationalism among Indians was one of the major reasons, because Indians were very much aware that now we have to free India. So almost all section of people, with the emergence of Gandhi as a national leader, they got connected. So that was one reason where growing nationalism was one of the reason where everyone wanted us, the Britishers, to leave India. That is why, Quit India became very popular. The third one is the Second World War and the rise of Japan. See, Japan was an Axis power. When the Rome-Berlin-Tokyo Axis was signed in 1936 and Japan entered, supporting Hitler and Mussolini with Tito as their leader and all those stuff in world history. But when you look at it, Japan started to attack all the British colonies in Southeast Asia. Fall of Singapore, fall of Malaysia. When Japan began to occupy all of them, Japan came with a slogan to India called Asia for Asians. So Gandhi was frightened. It petrified all the Congress leaders, that because we never wanted to go into another colonial rule. So immediately Gandhi gave a slogan telling that no, Asia not for Asians, India for Indians. So getting it, so it was a very important one where Japan was knocking the doors of India, and it is said that they started bombing all the territories. So the bombing of Rangoon, it alarmed Indians. So that was one of the reason. And there was a big rise of prices. So all the food crops and all of them, so that all, you can club it under economic conditions as well. The socio-economic conditions was also one of the reason why, Quit India movement was launched. So you can make a side heading, write all of them, give two lines, and we can end it. The second part says, what were the results of the Quit India movement? Now, moving on to the results of the Quit India movement. Moving on to the result of Quit India movement, when you look at it, it was a radical movement. So we've written that already in the introduction. Quit India movement was radical. See, non-cooperation movement was urban-based. Civil disobedience movement was wider. Quit India movement was radical turned violent. And the spread was so much. That's what I've just made you to understand in the introduction part. It was very much radical. The second one, we say that the impact is, it became leaderless, because it was a spontaneous movement also, and it became a leaderless movement also. That was something there. The third one, it had a wide reach. The Quit India movement was able to extend towards the length and breadth of of Indian subcontinent, because everyone, all sections of people in a way participated in the Quit India movement. Then we have the emergence of young leaders like, you can quote, Ram Manohar Lohia, you can quote JP, Jayaprakash Narayan. So, all of them, they all actively participated in the Quit India movement. And we see the emergence of these young leaders, became very prominent there. And the swiftness, the young blood, the energy, the swiftness made the movement to reach faster. Then you can quote that the role of women. So here we have the role of women, like a very great ruler called Aruna Asaf Ali. You can quote Usha Mehta, who actually, she was with the Congress radio. Getting it, Aruna Asaf Ali's emergence is something very much immense. Many young women started, and when women entered the movement, the movement took a very different turn. So that is one of the significance, or we can say that was one of the result. And the final thing what we got was the feel of independence, because many parallel governments were established during the Quit India movement. Parallel governments were established, and when these governments were established, people started feeling it. Okay, because Gandhi's slogan "Do or Die" also was one of the push for the Quit India movement. So this made everyone, get a feel that okay, we are just getting closer towards independence. And the World War came to an end in 45. UNO came, decolonization entered, America's pressure on Britain to relieve India. So multiple other factors were also there. But of course, Quit India movement played a very important role to get the feel of independence. So this is how but you need to get a very overall idea about a particular topic. Again, students do understand it's not tough. You study, these are going to be easy. Fine, let's move on to the next question. Yeah. So it's a very, again, a very interesting question. Though the greater Cholas, so greater Cholas came around 850 to 1258 AD. Imperial Cholas, so they're mentioning about them. Though the greater Cholas are no more yet. Getting it? They're no more yet. So greater Cholas are not there because, we don't have monarchy now. But their name is still remembered. Yes, of course, the name is still remembered with great pride. Of course, we have a very big pride on the Cholas because of their highest achievements in the domain of art and architecture. Again, UPSC says hitting on art. So art includes here dance, art includes music, art includes sculpture, art includes paintings, art includes literature. Then, of course, architecture, we talk about the temple. See, it's a big question. It's a very easy question, I would say. And it's a very interesting question because these are all dealt in orderly way in detail. So again, the answer would be, it's like comment, give your view about it. Getting it? And generally, we are just trying to highlight of what exactly the Cholas did. Getting it? Because the question, it's a quotation. First, we need to understand it's a quote. The quote is given. So you're going to comment on the quote. That is how you have to see this question. Coming on here. Yeah. So first thing, you can start with how the Cholas were. Of course, the Cholas played a very important role in the concept of architecture. So the first thing you have to quote about the Dravidian type of architecture. You have to write about the Dravidian architecture, which includes 7 points, 7 features are there. So the first one being the sanctum, the Garbhagriha. The second one being the Vimana, the curved pyramidical octagonal tower. The third one being the Shikara, the monolithic one. The fourth one being the Kalash. The fifth one being the Mandapa, on both sides adjoining the sanctum or on any one side. The sixth one being the Teppam, the water tank. And the seventh one being the Gopuram. So you need to know them in an orderly way. So these 7 features constitute a Dravidian temple. So the best example of the Dravidian temple, number 1, we can talk about the Parantaka's temple called the Natraj temple at Chidambaram. So Chidambaram is a place in Tamil Nadu. So the Natraj temple at Chidambaram, built by Parantaka Chola. You can add the ruler. It was by Parantaka. So you can give an example that. So it's a great temple where Natraj, Shiva in a dancing form, the Ardhanari, that form. This Natraj, you can link it with what? With sculpture. Cholas were great, introducers of a new form of Shiva called Natraj, the dancing Shiva. And when you look at the sculpture there, Natraj, he is actually a form. And that's a form of a dance called Tandav. It's a part of Bharatanatyam. And this Tandav is a cosmic dance. So it is also say he's Ardhanari. So in this sculpture, Urayur, a city in Tamil Nadu, became a great center for Chola bronze sculpture. Even today, you can see the bronze statue of Chola, Natraj. So it's placed everywhere. Even during the G20 summit, in the Bharata Mandapa, the Natraj statue was only placed. So Cholas are always remembered. That's what, we keep remembering them. Even they're not there today, but still we keep remembering them in some way or the other. So you can link this temple with sculpture because Natraj statue, and they were doing it with the lost wax technique. That was also very prominent there. So I'm just connecting it with sculpture here. The Natraj temple. The second temple we can call about the Brihadishwara temple. The Brihadishwara temple at Tanjore, built by Rajaraja Chola. Tanjore built by Rajaraja Chola. If you know the year, you can write it 1010 AD. So it's called Periya Koil. It's called Rajarajeshwaram temple. Getting the first granite temple of India. Such a massive temple. So Periya means big. Koil means temple. It's called Periya Koil. And when you look at the temple, it's got a huge Nandi. It's got a very big mandapa. The Gopuram is very small. The Vimana is huge. And the Shikara is a monolithic one. The Linga in the temple is a monolithic Linga. So these are all, because Cholas were proponents of hard stone. Instead of brick, they started using stone, big stones, hard stone. It is a granite temple. So you can code this temple and you have to draw the sketch also, because since they've asked architecture, you have to draw the temple. A small diagram on the right corner of your answer sheet will do. The third one you can talk about the Gangai Konda Cholapuram temple. The Gangai Konda Cholapuram temple at Gangai Konda Cholapuram near Tanjore. This was built by Rajendra Chola. Getting it? So you can quote this temple because, after the war, the Ganga waters were brought. So it's a very popular temple. That's why the great living Chola temples is all a UNESCO site. So you can highlight these temples telling that they're all great temples. Of course, there are many other temples also, but due to lack of space and since we have to put more into the paper, just try to cut it short. Getting it? You'll know more. You have to compress it and you have to make it small and you have to write an answer. So this is about the temple. So draw the sketch here. I'll just give you an idea of how to draw a temple here. See, this is the land surface. This is the sanctum. So number one, a curved pyramidal octagonal tower. This is the Vimana. This is the Shikara. And this is the Kalash. Adjoining the sanctum, either on one side or both sides, you have the Mandapa. Then near the Mandapa, you have the Teppam. This is the water tank. So I call it as the Teppam. Then if this is the land surface, so I have a pyramidal tapering tower. So I call this as Gopuram. So Gopuram also has got Kalash. Now when I number the temple now, if I could number it, I'll call this 1 Sanctum, number 2 Vimana, number 3 Shikara, number 4 Kalash, number 5 Mandapa. During Vijayanagar, this will be called Kalyana Mandapa. Number 6 Teppam, the water tank. Number 7 Gopuram. Simple. So if you know the order, you have to be like, when you study, you'll automatically know. I keep telling my students, you hear my voice and you'll hear my voice in the examination hall because we've done it in so detail with much clarity and depth, so it would be easy. So draw this diagram and keep it aside. So it'll be fine. So write the parts, sanctum, vimana, and it'll be octagonal shape. So it's fine. Coming on to painting. So going on to the next part, Chola painting, you can pitch Rajaraja Chola everywhere because Rajaraja contributed more everywhere. Because of course, Imperial Cholas goes with Rajaraja. So painting, again, you can say that the Chola painting. So Chola painting, the main theme of Chola painting was divinity, gods. Cholas gave more importance to painting gods in their walls of the temple, or it was also a miniature painting. Solo gods were taken as theme. Solo gods here, Shiva, Vishnu, Durga, Murugan, Kali, Krishna, solo gods were taken. And if you look at the colors, Cholas use 6 colors there in the painting. Red, green, blue, black, white, yellow. So the faces of the gods were painted. Say, for example, Kali's face was painted in black. Meenakshi's face was painted in green. Murugan's face was painted in red. Krishna's face was painted in blue. So colors played a very important role in Chola painting, and Cholas were using dull colors, kind of dark color. So when you look at the Rajputs used to use flashy color because in Chola painting the outline was given in gold. So when you give a golden outline and the face painted with dark color, gold and the dark color would highlight. That was a unique feature of Chola painting. Then coming on to dance, as I told you, Natraj, Bharatanatyam was promoted during Chola period, and there were some dancing girls, the temple girls. We call them as the temple dancing girls. So the Devadasis used to dance in the temple. So dance got promoted, and particularly what dance was promoted during Cholas? It was Bharatanatyam. So they were like these girls dancing in the mandapa of the temple. So these mandapas were for dance. Getting it? So about dance, and you can quote Natraj here. Music again, Cholas were patrons of music. All sorts of that concept of the beginning of Carnatic music. Though Carnatic music came bit later, but the idea of Carnatic music, that is singing devotional songs, Tevaram, Nalayara Divya Prabandham, singing kirtans in name of God. So all these comes in music accompanied with local musical instruments. Then literature, of course. The great scholar Kamban, he lived during the Cholas, who wrote Ramayana in Tamil. Then we have a great scholar called Sekilar. Sekilar took the 18 Puranas, and he wrote Periya Puranam in Tamil. So all these great works were written, and Rajaraja Chola made sure that Devaram is sung in all the temples and people are learning Devaram and Prabandham. So in a way, Cholas have contributed immense to the growth of art and literature in South. So it's a quote. Do understand it's a quote. You're going to comment on the quote. So this is the answer. I hope you got an idea. So this is how it's going to move. The next question. How far it is correct to say? How far it is correct to say? So UPSC is asking you, how far is it correct to say? So you have to say yes or no. That the First World War was fought essentially for the preservation of balance of power. So now when they ask you this, how far is it correct to say? It's like slightly tricky. So you need to understand the concept. Whenever UPSC asks you, how far do you agree, that you is not a personal you. That you is a historian's view. You need to understand the basics and get the answers here. Now they're talking about the First World War. So let's go to the First World War. First World War was fought in 1914. It was fought till 1918. And in the First World War, there were two great powers. One was called the Allied powers, and the one was called, the Central powers. Allied and the Central powers. And when you look at the First World War, predominantly Allied powers included Britain, it included France, it included Russia, it included later Italy entered the war, and USA also entered the war. Getting it later. When you look at the Central powers, it was Germany, it was Austria-Hungary, and it was Turkey. So these three powers were fighting the war. Predominantly, they are the major players. Now look at the question. Given introduction of the First World War, why do we call it as a First World War? Because all the countries of the world either directly or indirectly participated in the war. And the entire resources of the world was used in the war. So it's also called as a total war. The war was fought for 4 long years. I always tell a trick to students. It was fought for 4 years, 3 months, 2 weeks. So 4-3-2, it's easy to remember. 4 years, 3 months, 2 weeks, the war was fought. So give an idea about introduction of the war, and the theatre of war was Europe. And these were the major power. Now, we are going to the question. Is it correct to say that the First World War was fought essentially for the preservation of balance of power? So when you look at balance of power at Europe, Britain was the only country which always decides that balance of power to be maintained. Now let's look at the country. Let's have a quick read. Britain, the mother country of Europe, she always wants to maintain balance of power. So whenever there's a disturbance in the balance of power in Europe, the first country to come out will be Britain. Yes, she actually wanted to maintain that balance of power. Going on to France. For France, she never wanted to maintain a balance of power. For France, the World War was a revenge. So on whom did she wanted to take a revenge? She wanted to take a revenge on Germany. France wanted to take a revenge on Germany because Germany took Alsace and Lorraine from France. So for France, the World War was a revenge, not a balance of power. Number 3, Russia. For Russia, it was not a balance of power. For France, no. For Russia, it was not a balance of power. Russia wanted to help the Slavic brothers, Serbia, Croatia. So she wanted to help the Balkan states because why? They all come from the Slav race. So Russia wanted, and Russia had an economic and a social impact on the Balkan states. So Russia wanted to be a savior of whom? The Slavic states. So Russia entered the war. Plus, Russia wanted an entry towards Europe. So she participated in the war for her economic and political benefit. And Italy. Why did Italy enter the war? Italy, no, she never wanted to do balance of power. Italy wanted to enter the war because Italy wanted territories. Italy wanted territories. She wanted the Strait of Dardanelles. She wanted the Bosporus Strait. So Italy was only wanting, she wanted Fiume. So she participated in the war because of territory. Russia participated in the war because of her Slavic brothers. France wanted to take a revenge on Germany. Britain wanted to maintain balance of power. Then USA. USA was supporting the war. And USA was forced to come to the war. It was a compulsion. Why? Because Germany, one ship was moving in the Atlantic, Lusitania. Germany sunk the ship and 275 passengers died. America got angry. So Woodrow Wilson passed a resolution in the Senate. Immediately, America entered the war to teach a lesson for Germany. So she was dragged to the war. So, except Britain, all the other powers did not enter the war for balance of power. So read the question. Is this correct to say? No. Maybe it looks like they all were maintaining balance of power, but the only country which came for balance of power was whom? Britain. Now let's take the child of Germany. Germany was a very arrogant country. Germany wanted to take the first rank status of Europe, and after the death of Bismarck, Germany became the second largest producer of iron in the world, iron in Europe. So, she wanted to compete with Britain. For Germany, it was a competition. She wanted to finish Britain off. So, she entered the war. Habsburg Empire, Austria-Hungary. She wanted to maintain the Balkan states under her control. And she wanted to show her supremacy. So, she never wanted to maintain balance of power. And Turkey again, no balance of power because the Ottoman Empire almost started breaking. The Turkey was very small country now. Though the empire was running, it was not like the previous Ottoman Empire. So she wanted to take a revenge because what? Many states have declared independence. So the only country which came to maintain balance of power was Britain. So you can just conclude telling that though, because why? These countries started making secret alliances. So the triple entente, the triple cordial, the dual alliances. So all these secret alliances they made. Why? To secure their own interest. Plus they were all mad towards arms. Plus they all had one concept called aggressive nationalism. Are you big or am I big? They wanted to show their military strength to the world. So that is why, they all were pushed to the war. So in a way, you conclude that in a way, the World War was fought to maintain balance of power, but the country which was aptly said was only Britain. The other countries had their own personal interest. So that is how you conclude your answer. So now we've done the discussion. So now from my side, I wanted to tell you that history as a subject in GS, if your concepts are very clear, if your facts are very thorough, and you have an overall, that applying mind, and you try to fuse it together, your answer would be complete. So that is what I keep on telling my students. I keep on encouraging my students that history is not tough. Understand the question. If you don't get it, read, reread, reread. Any question will have multiple parts. Break them. Divide the question into multiple parts and try to understand. Then think about your classes. Have your class notes, the sources what you've studied. Try to put all of them together. Then go to the question. Meet the demand of the question. Then start writing it. Before writing it, take a pencil and write all the points so that you understand, like you should know what to write. Then once you've taken all the points, rough points, then you can fill it in your paper. So this means, history did had a very important role in GS paper 1. And, history was, I won't say it was moderate. I would say history was very easy this time. So I thank you all. Getting it. Good luck. See you with the other pattern and other paper discussion. Thank you.